Have you ever noticed that the loudest battles in your life are the ones nobody can see? You can be sitting in a quiet room, doing absolutely nothing, and still feel exhausted. Not because you worked too hard, but because your mind won't stop talking. Overthinking is strange like that. It doesn't feel like a problem. It feels like being responsible, like you're preparing, like you're analyzing, like you're protecting yourself. But over time, it starts stealing something from you, your peace, and eventually, your life. Overthinking often begins with a good intention. Your brain wants to keep you safe. It wants to prevent mistakes, avoid embarrassment, predict danger. So it runs simulations. If I say this, what will they think? If I choose this, what if it goes wrong? If I start, what if I fail? But there's a hidden cost. The mind can't tell the difference between imagining a threat and living inside one, so you start feeling stress without anything happening. Overthinking is a form of fear that disguises itself as intelligence. Here's how the loop usually works. You get a thought, then you chase it, then you try to solve it. But the moment you solve it, your mind creates a new version of the problem, and it feels endless. Not because you're weak, but because your brain is trying to create certainty in a world that doesn't offer it. And that's the tragedy. Overthinkers don't suffer because they think too much. They suffer because they demand a guarantee life can't give. The mind asks for certainty, but life only offers probabilities. Overthinking hits smart people hard because intelligence is powerful, but it has a downside. A sharp mind can imagine every outcome, every risk, every future regret. So it becomes easy to live in the future, to live in what if. But there's a philosophical problem here. The future isn't real yet, and the past isn't alive anymore. So when your attention lives there, you lose the only place life can be experienced, right now. Overthinking isn't living in reality. It's living in rehearsals. At the core of overthinking is one hidden belief. If I think enough, I can control what happens. But control is a comforting myth, because control feels like safety. The Stoics understood this thousands of years ago. They taught that peace doesn't come from controlling life. It comes from controlling your relationship to life. There are things you influence, and things you don't. And when you confuse the two, you get anxiety. Because anxiety is often just this: trying to control what cannot be controlled. Anxiety is the cost of trying to control the uncontrollable. Overthinking doesn't just create stress, it creates delay. You don't start the project because you're still thinking about the perfect plan. You don't send the message because you're still rewriting it in your head. You don't take the opportunity because you're still imagining what could go wrong. And one day, you look back and realize something painful. You didn't lose your life in one dramatic moment. You lost it in thousands of small hesitations. Your life doesn't collapse from one big mistake. It disappears from small delays. So what's the solution? Not stop thinking. That's impossible. The solution is learning a new relationship with thought, to notice thoughts without obeying them, to let uncertainty exist without treating it as danger. Because clarity doesn't always come before action. Often clarity comes because you acted. Overthinking says, wait until you feel ready. Life says, you become ready by moving. Clarity is not found by thinking. It's found by living. And here's the part most people miss. Overthinking isn't just too many thoughts. It's a habit of treating thoughts like commands. A thought appears, and you follow it. What if this goes wrong? And suddenly you're planning for disaster. What if they judge me? And suddenly you're shrinking your personality. What if I waste my time? And suddenly you're not doing anything at all. But a thought is not a prophecy. A thought is not a fact. A thought is often just noise. A thought is a suggestion, not an order. Overthinking becomes even more dangerous when it attaches itself to your identity. Some people don't just experience overthinking, they start to become the overthinker. They tell themselves, "This is just how I am. I'm an anxious person. I'm a cautious person. I need to understand everything before I move." And the mind loves labels. Because labels feel stable. But labels also become cages. Because once you accept a label, you begin living in ways that prove it true. You avoid risk to stay safe. You avoid action to stay prepared. You avoid change to stay in control. And then you wonder why life feels small. When you label yourself, you stop exploring yourself. Here's a moment many people recognize. You finally get time alone. No noise, no notifications, no demands. And instead of peace, your mind gets louder. You replay conversations. You rewrite what you should have said. You imagine future problems that haven't happened. And you realize something disturbing. Even when life is quiet, you're not. That's the moment you understand overthinking isn't responding to reality. It's creating a reality. Overthinking doesn't solve your life. It replaces it. So what do you do? Here's a simple practice. When your mind throws a thought at you, ask, is this useful right now? Not, is it true? Because many thoughts might be true, but they still might not be useful. If you're trying to sleep and your mind says, what if you fail next year? That's not useful. If you're trying to start something and your mind says, what if people laugh? That's not useful. Usefulness brings you back to the present. Usefulness brings you back to action. Don't ask, is it true? Ask, is it useful? And maybe this is the real lesson. Peace isn't the absence of problems. Peace is the ability to live without letting your mind turn every problem into 1,000 imagined disasters. You don't need to win every thought. You just need to stop giving every thought the power to control your next step. Because life is not lived in your head. It's lived in what you do next. Your next step matters more than your next thought.